Hello and welcome to this week's assembly. The story I'm going to tell you today from the Bible, I think teaches us lots of different things. I think it teaches us something about power and authority, about kindness and treating people equally, about tolerance and respect. It may teach other things as well. Perhaps you could think of some of those and discuss them in your classes. It might be things that fit in with your school values as well. So, authority is the right to be in charge and to give orders, and power is the ability to carry out those orders. So, for example, if you're driving along in your car with your mum or dad, and a policeman's in the road in front of you and puts his hand up like that, the driver of your car would stop, I'm sure. I would stop, because the policeman has authority to stop us. They haven't got the power to stop us because they're not Superman. And if they went like that and we drove on, the policeman couldn't stop us. So that's a little example of a difference between power and authority. Today's story from the Bible is about an army officer. Now, today, army officers have the power and the authority to give orders. And the army officer in our story had power to give orders. He could tell his soldiers where to go, what to do, and he knew that they would obey him. He could even make decisions for them. And because this officer was important and rich, he had plenty of servants to look after him. Now, at Jesus' time, when Jesus lived in Israel, you probably know, but there were two groups of people that lived there. There were the Israelites, whose country it was and who were born and brought up there. And there was also the Roman soldiers who had invaded Israel and conquered it. And the Roman soldiers were now in charge. And these two groups of people didn't like each other. And in Israel at that time, you probably know, there were groups of religious people called scribes and Pharisees who made rules and expected the other Israelite people to obey them, to carry them out, to live by the rules that the Pharisees had made up. And the Pharisees were very bossy, and they liked telling people what to do. Now, Jesus got into lots of arguments with the Pharisees and the scribes during his life because they didn't like the things he did and they didn't like the things he said. For example, if there were people that were naughty and did wrong things, who had made mistakes and got into trouble, and they said, "Sorry," Jesus said, "I forgive you." Now, the scribes and the Pharisees didn't like that. And perhaps you can help me here. When Jesus said or did things they didn't like, they said, ready, put your head forward, hands on your hips, and say with me, "You can't do that." Ready? And you can pull a face that you think the Pharisees might have pulled. "You can't do that." But Jesus said, "Yes, I can." And another thing Jesus did was on the Sabbath day, which was the holy day for the Jews, where they said you couldn't do any work. Sometimes Jesus healed people with broken bodies. So he healed the blind, the deaf, people with leprosy, and lame people. And when Jesus did that, these Pharisees said, "Are you ready? You can't do that." But Jesus said, "Yes, I can." Another thing that Jesus did, he treated women and children with respect and kindness. And the Pharisees said, "You can't do that." But Jesus said, "Yes, I can." So Jesus kept getting into trouble. And this is a story of another time that he got into trouble. In a town called Capernaum, there was a Roman house where a Roman lived. Now, he was a soldier We don't know his name, but for our story, we'll call him Marcus. Marcus was a soldier in the Roman army. In fact, he was Centurion, which means he was in charge of 100 soldiers. Now, Marcus was a bit unusual for a Roman because he didn't believe in the Roman gods like Jupiter, Mars, or Venus. In fact, he believed in the one true God, the same as God as the Israelites. He even gave money to the local people, the local Israelite people, so that they could build a synagogue, which was like their church, a place where they could worship God. Now, one day, one of Marcus's servants, called Ben, was carrying firewood along from the shed going into the house, but he tripped, he fell over and banged his head. And he was knocked out for a minute or two. And when he came round, he found that he couldn't move. So some of the other servants lifted Marcus up and put him on a bed and went to tell Marcus. "Oh dear," said Marcus, because he was kind. He said, "Look after him and let's see if he is any better tomorrow." When the next day came, Ben was no better. So Marcus sent for the doctor. The doctor came, examined Ben and said, "Oh dear, there's nothing I can do. I'm afraid he's going to get worse." And that's what happened. Ben did get worse and worse and worse. He got so bad it looked like he was going to die. But one of the servants said to Marcus, "Sir, have you heard about Jesus? Maybe he could help. Maybe he would heal Ben. He's done some amazing miracles. He's healed people of various diseases and illnesses. Even last week, he changed water into wine at a wedding." Marcus replied, "We must see if he'll come to help Ben." So Marcus asked one of the town leaders to go and speak to Jesus on his behalf, because Marcus knew that he was a Roman and he didn't know whether Jesus would want to speak to him or not. And so this man went and found Jesus. He said to Jesus, "One of our people is seriously ill and dying. It's Ben, and he is a servant at the Roman's house. He can't move. He's at the Roman's house." "I'll come right away," said Jesus. Oh dear, that upset the Pharisees, because they said, "Go to a Roman house, Jesus? Are you serious? Are you ready? You can't do that." But Jesus said, "Yes, I can." And they said, "Go into that house, we'll make a lot of trouble. We have rules about foreigners, you know." Ready? "You can't do that." But Jesus said, "Yes, I can." And off Jesus went, followed by his disciples and a big crowd. As they got near Marcus's house, out came Marcus running towards them. Sir, stop right there," said Marcus. "Why?" said Jesus. "Ben's sick. I can help him." "Well, it'll make trouble for you, won't it, if you come in at my house," said Marcus. "And you know, you don't really need to come in, do you?" "What do you mean?" said Jesus. He was fascinated. "Look, sir," said Marcus, "I'm a soldier. I have 100 soldiers under me. I tell them, go there, and they go. I say, go there, and they go. I say, go and cross the river, and they go and cross the river. They do what I tell them because I'm in charge. And I've heard about you. I know you have authority and power over all sicknesses. So if you stand here and say the word, my servant will be well." Because you can do that, can't you? There was a long silence. Jesus started smiling. And then he started laughing. And he said, "That is absolutely brilliant." And he turned to the crowd and said, "I finally found someone who really trusts me. And he's a Roman. That is brilliant. My own people don't trust me like Marcus." "Marcus," Jesus said to Marcus, "it's all right. Ben is going to be well. Trust me on this. And thank you." Marcus dashed to his house, and as he was coming towards the door, out came another servant. They almost run into each other, and the servant said, "Sir, I was going to tell you, don't bother Jesus anymore. Ben's got up. He can walk. He's totally well." I wonder what happened next. Perhaps you could write a story, Ben's story or Marcus's story, and tell us what happened in their lives. Now, the centurion, Marcus, was a very important man. He knew that by giving orders to his soldiers, they would obey him. But he also knew that Jesus could control things that he couldn't. He couldn't make anyone better, but he believed and trusted that Jesus could. And Jesus ordered an illness to go away from somebody, and it did. That story also teaches us about trust and respect, doesn't it? Trust is believing someone to be good, honest, or safe. And respect is admiring someone because they have good qualities or ideas. Who do you trust? Well, it depends, doesn't it? We trust some people to look after us at home. We trust others to provide us with food. What about if we get on a bus or an aeroplane? We trust the bus driver or the pilot to get us where we want to go safely. We trust people for different things. And in our country, as you know, we're made up of all sorts of different people, all sorts of different heights and sizes and skills and abilities, all kinds of different skin colours. We all like to eat different foods. Sometimes we wear different clothes. We like different hobbies. And we all have different faiths and beliefs too. And we all look different. I wonder what we could learn from Marcus about learning to respect or trust other people who are different. We may never have seen an actual miracle, but if you have, perhaps you could share it in your class later. But if you think about it for a minute, I think we all see amazing things every day, don't we? What about the sun coming up every day? What about the earth continuing to spin and orbit the sun? That happens all the time, doesn't it? What about the changes in weather? And what about the flowers? Are you noticing some of the flowers, some of the bulbs are starting to come through the soil, and soon we'll have flowers? Have you ever looked at a spider's web, especially when there's been a frost, and how amazing it looks? What about the cry of a newborn baby? And what about an act of kindness that you might have seen at school or at home or in your community? All these things are amazing. I'm going to close with a prayer, and then we'll have a quiz on this assembly. Dear God, I pray that we may learn about Jesus and the amazing things that he did. Help us to treat people the same, to be fair with people. Help us to be kind with people, even if they're different from us. And help us to respect others, even if they have different ideas or different beliefs. We pray for each of us, Lord, that we might be kind to other people, as Jesus was kind, and as Marcus was kind to his servant in the story. Help us to be kind to others. Amen. Okay, good to see you again. Hope to be in your school very soon and see you face to face. Bye. Bye.